New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, good morning. My name is Tracy Brown and I am so delighted to be with you today. Maybe you're a regular viewer, watcher, listener, and you know that we come to you live every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And the we is a group of 7 of us who rotate through in the first 8 months of the year the Science of Mind textbook written by Ernest Holmes. And we go through it in sequential order to get an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper in the context that Ernest Holmes delivered the teaching of the Science of Mind. And then from mid-August through the end of the year, we take turns pulling examples of wisdom from the Science of Mind Library and Archives and sharing that with you as a way to explore different ideas and different themes, but always in the context of Science of Mind, a way of life, a faith, a philosophy, and a way of life. So as I said, my name is Tracy Brown, and today we are going to be focusing on a recording that Ernest Holmes did. He wrote, he took the Lord's Prayer as a foundation, and then he made it a little metaphysical, and he focused the prayer on the United States. So I'm so glad that you have joined us today. That's where we're going. Hey, Shay, it's so cool that you are again with us. And I can see there are a few people who have dialed in live. So if you want to be like Shay, you can put your name and where you're dialing in from or watching from in the comments. And speaking of the comments, I just want to remind you that the reason we named this the Science of Mind and Spirit Saturday Morning Conversations was because we wanted to be sure that you had an opportunity to have input. So if you have comments as we go through the morning, good morning, Linda, or if you have questions that relate to the topic or anything related to Science of Mind, you can also put that into the comments. And I will do my best to monitor the comments and bring in your comments, even if I don't address them directly. So why the metaphysical prayer for our country? Well, At the time this is being delivered and recorded, we are in mid-October 2024. And in a few short weeks, there will be a national election in the United States. And it seems to me that this is the perfect time to double our efforts in terms of prayer and to, of course, take action, because in Science of Mind, we actually teach, you hear people frequently say, treat and move your feet. Treat, meaning do a spiritual mind treatment, treat the condition that is existing by claiming and declaring what you want the new condition to be. Treat, yes, and move your feet, meaning take action. Now, we know that when we say a prayer or do a treatment, that we are taking an action. It's an action in the spiritual universe. It is an action that actually creates a new cause and sets a new cause into motion. And so treatment is an action. It is an action and a shift in consciousness. It is an action and a shift in thought. It is an action and a shift in mental connection with spirit, and it is influencing what does happen. And we say treat and move your feet, meaning align your physical action with the mental action that you are claiming, that you are putting into action, that you are declaring. And so I do hope that while we are all doubling our efforts, or at least being consistent in our efforts, that we speak a prayer for what is best for the country, that we also move our feet. And whether that means being a support for other people, or I have several friends who have been working the phone lines for the candidate of their choice, whether it's state, local, state, or national. I know several people who got registered as, got certified to register people to vote. I know a number of people who have actually volunteered to be people who would travel around the country and knock on doors and go to public places and have conversations in support of democracy or in support of the candidate of their choice. And so it's not about voting a specific way. It is about influencing or taking action that is in alignment with what you envision the United States to be in the treatment that you do, in the, whether it's a written treatment, a verbal treatment. Our prayers must be accompanied by action. And side note or sidebar, interesting, I think, sidebar, is that actually, even though we say treat and move your feet, there is an ancient African proverb that says, pray, then move your feet. So we say treat and move your feet. And the African tradition, philosophy, and affirmation and proverb is pray, then move your feet. So in both cases, it is about aligning the action. One other thing before we listen to Ernest Holmes and the prayer that he did in 1952. So maybe two other things. One is that this prayer, when we say Metaphysical Lord's Prayer for our country, which is the actual name of the prayer, that Ernest Holmes built it around the Lord's Prayer. And most people from a Christian background are familiar with the Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Um, And so I think it's fascinating that Ernest Holmes would use that as a foundation in order to be able to reach and communicate with a very wide pool of people who would find some familiarity in the foundation of the prayer. But when we listen to it, I want you to listen to it for that, but also listen to how he I won't say tweak it, because actually the Lord's Prayer follows the 5 steps of treatment, but how he expands it to be metaphysical versus literal, or versus um, only grounded in the Christian perspective. And I would say that in Western culture, or in the United States specifically, many people who were not raised in a Christian environment are also familiar with this prayer. So, or with the Lord's Prayer. And so it's one of the things that attracted me to pull it out and listen to it when I saw it was in the archives, because I was just curious. And Ernest Holmes has another prayer that many of you may be familiar with, which is my prayer for my country. But this is not the same thing. This is not that same prayer that you've heard many times before. Um, so, what else do I need to tell you about it before I play it for the first time? I need to tell you that this prayer was pulled from the archives. And since we are in the last third of the year where we are pulling items from the archives, you can find this prayer in the archives at, I'm going to put a link in the chat, at that link. And if you are not a member of the archives, it will cost you a whopping $1.29 to download your own copy of this prayer. But I highly recommend you become a member of the archives, because if you join at even the lowest level, you get a certain number of downloads of print material, audio material, anything that is in archives on a monthly basis. Okay, so the audio prayer, Metaphysical Lord's Prayer for Our Country, it is less than 2 minutes long, and I'm going to let it play twice. So it will immediately start over, because I want you to have the opportunity to take it in. Since you can't visually see the words, just relax, just go into a meditative state and take it in. And like I said, I will repeat it. All right, let me find it, and then we will go. Here we go.
For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, as each says quietly to himself, Our Father which art in heaven. We affirm that our Father which art in heaven is the Spirit of God in us. Our Father is within us as well as around us, and heaven is here and now. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory. The power of the living Spirit flows through us now, and the glory and the light of the everlasting presence is around us. And that presence does go before us and prepare the way, and the power does go with us and make perfect our path. We affirm that this kingdom and this power and this glory, we affirm it for our beloved country, and we affirm that our leaders are led and guided in all their decisions, that they are impelled to do that which is noble and constructive. We affirm that this, our beloved nation, shall continue to exist in freedom and under divine guidance, shall keep sacred the liberty of each one of us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forevermore. And now let us take as the thought for our meditation today these words from the Lord's Prayer. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, as each says quietly to himself. Our Father which art in heaven. We affirm that our Father which art in heaven is the Spirit of God in us. Our Father is within us as well as around us, and heaven is here and now. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. The power of the living Spirit flows through us now, and the glory and the light of the everlasting presence is around us. And that presence does go before us and prepare the way, and the power does go with us and make perfect our path. We affirm that this kingdom and this power and this glory, we affirm it for our beloved country, and we affirm that our leaders are led and guided in all their decisions, that they are impelled to do that which is noble and constructive. We affirm that this, our beloved nation, shall continue to exist in freedom and under divine guidance, shall keep sacred the liberty of each one of us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forevermore. And now
Yeah. Whew. I'm not sure exactly what I want to say about this prayer. And obviously, this isn't the first time I listened to it. I listened to it about 10 times before the show started. And every time still, it makes me take a deep breath. So I first want to just take in the prayer itself before I start picking it apart and talking about the different elements. You know, before I played the prayer, I mentioned how one of the reasons I wanted to share this from the archives is because it's timely with a national election scheduled to happen in a short time, in a few short weeks in the US. And what I didn't say is the other reason, or another reason that I selected this is because the importance of us recognizing that what happens in the US and what happens when we do spiritual mind treatment is that it affects everyone in the world. And it's our responsibility to treat for things that are happening around the globe as well. So when I listened to this prayer, even though Ernest Holmes fashions it as a prayer for our country, for the US, he refers to global themes. He refers to things that we have in our CFL Global Vision as well, in terms of how we envision the world to be, And so it's important, I think, at this point for me to share with you that Ernest Holmes wrote this, as I already said, in 1952, in May of 1952. So, what was going on in the US in May of 1952? In 1952, the Korean War, which started in 1950, had escalated because the Korean War did not end until summer of 1953. So when Ernest Holmes spoke this prayer, he was speaking to and for decisions to be made that would benefit all and that would retain, as you heard in the prayer, retain freedom for those in the United States. So from Wikipedia, which I don't usually quote, but from Wikipedia, the Korean War was an armed conflict on the Korean Peninsula fought between North Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and South Korea, the Republic of Korea, and their allies. And so since the Korean War started in June of 1950, this prayer was done 2 years in. So think about war in the world in 2024, in October 2024. There are wars being fought in multiple places around the globe right now. And so, even as we are focusing on the US, many of us, and a national presidential election, as well as really important state and local elections, we also are laying the foundation for how the United States is engaged in what is happening around the world. So the metaphysical prayer, Lord's Prayer for our country, it's just so interesting, right? How we can take something that was recorded in 1952 and bring it forward and have it be directly relevant to what is going on in the world today. Now, I did post the link to the prayer if you want to download it from the archives. Linda, I see that it didn't show up in all of the different Facebook pages where we are broadcasting. However, I believe it is up in the description for today's show. And you can simply go to scienceofmindarchives.com, scienceofmindarchives.com, and I'll put, well, that link is there as well on the banner, on the scrolling banner. Visit the Science of Mind archives and then put in Lord's Prayer for our country. Or you can go to Science of Mind archives and you can, under products, look for Ernest Holmes audio and then scroll through and find the metaphysical Lord's Prayer for our country. And I'm not sure why it might not be showing up for you. I know it's showing up on some of the comments and not in others, some of the chat and not in others. So great. I'm glad you see it. Wow. So, okay. So the Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, or which art in heaven, blah, 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 blah. I don't mean blah, 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 like it's not important, but as soon as for many people, if you say our Father, the prayer is just in their mind. If you were not raised with the prayer or you're not familiar with it, I'm going to highlight pieces of it now. So I love what Ernest Holmes did with this, right? He begins, "Our Father, which art in heaven," right? And then he metaphysicalizes it by reframing the word, reframing it as the Spirit of God is everywhere, and the Spirit of God, our Father, is within us. And he really does step one and step two of our spiritual mind treatment process, by reframing, rephrasing, and using different language, right? So I love that he emphasizes and makes very clear in that near the beginning that our Father is within us. And he makes a couple of comments. And yes, I'm going to replay it again after I talk about it, right? So I played it twice. You just took it in. I'm going to talk about it a little bit for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to replay it again 2 or 3 times so you can take it in and then also simply be in the prayer. So that's one of the things that I loved about it, that he made it very clear that the Father that we are talking about in Our Father is the creator of all of life, is defined as an invisible spirit that is everywhere present. And then he inserts what would be the equivalent of our step 2 of spiritual mind treatment by saying the line, "Our Father is within us." As we know, our Father is within us. And then "Our Father, which art in heaven," then Ernest Holmes did a whole piece around heaven, right? That was, I thought, really powerful. And I don't know, I could be the only one who thought that, but I thought that was really powerful. And so, "Our Father which art in heaven," and after he gives us step 1 and 2, before he goes to step 3 and defines what we want to experience, he does this little piece about heaven. And he specifically says heaven is here and now. Right? He puts some framing around that, right? Heaven, it's not someplace far off up in the sky. You go there when you die. It is a place where there will be nothing but joy and pie. I mean, right? And he takes this concept of heaven and he brings it right here to the here and now. Heaven is here and now. And he does this before he then goes into what it is that we actually want to use. So he quotes from the Lord's Prayer, the power and the glory, and then he goes into claiming that which we want to create and or experience. That the power and the glory of the Infinite One is always working. And guess what? It's working on behalf of this nation, this country. And I know this to be true. And then he goes to specifics that this power and glory that is creating heaven, right? He brings those together and talks specifically about what is the condition of our leaders. Now, unlike some of the people you and I know who have been using prayer to specify one particular candidate over another, or to specify a specific result in a local election, then Ernest Ernest Holmes models for us what is it that we want, regardless of who the leader is, regardless of the name of the leader, regardless of the party of the leader. Ernest Holmes says our leaders are impelled to do noble and constructive things, or to be noble and constructive in the decisions they make. But those two words, noble and constructive. So I'm not attached to the form of who it is or what party they represent, but I want whoever is elected to be noble and constructive. Now, in this case, he was not talking about an election specifically, but that our country and the world would be led by people who would be noble and constructive. And then specifically about the U.S., he affirms that the U.S. continues to exist in freedom. This country continues to exist in freedom, or we as people in this country continue to exist in freedom. Now, remember the context. May 1952, the Korean War was going on. 2 years into the Korean War, did not end for another year. We had US troops involved in the war, people who were deployed, fighting as an ally. And so for Ernest Holmes to say that our country continues to exist, our people continue to exist in freedom. And another thing that he used that I actually am going to start working into some of my prayers and treatments. He used the phrase keep sacred, that here are the things that we want to keep sacred. And then he talks about those things that we consider sacred, the values, the spiritual principles that we consider sacred. So, of course, you're not surprised that I would choose this prayer, if you know me even a little bit, because I see it as a model for us as we are praying, leading up to, during, and after the upcoming election. I live in a state where there is a lot of tension, not just on the national level, but at the statewide level and in some of the local contests as well. And it's so easy to get caught up and thinking that a specific party is the best party, or a specific candidate is the only viable candidate. Yes, we are to choose. Yes, we make a choice between candidates and choose the one that we most support. That is our action on the human level. But our action on the spiritual level is to ask, what is it about that candidate that's really important to me? Let's find the spiritual prototype or the mental equivalent. And then that is what we pray for. So if someone else, the candidate we don't like, gets elected, that we are still praying they will operate by certain standards, spiritual standards, that they will apply certain values, spiritually grounded values, and that they will support, recognize, and defend the values that have been established in our nation by the Constitution, by the legislation that has happened in the past, in a way that really preserves democracy. So Ernest Holmes gives us a model, and I'm going to play it again, primarily for those of us who heard it a few minutes ago to just take it in and go a little deeper with it. And a few of you dialed in since I played it the first time. So this time I'm going to let it play 3 times. The first time, just take it in. The second time, think about how Ernest Holmes actually infused metaphysical concepts and science of mind concepts into the treatment, into the prayer. And then the third time, try to turn off your analytical mind and take it in one more time. All right. Metaphysical Lord's Prayer for Our Country by Ernest Holmes.
Let us take as the thought for our meditation today these words from the Lord's Prayer. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, as each says quietly to himself. Our Father which art in heaven. We affirm that our Father which art in heaven is the Spirit of God in us. Our Father is within us as well as around us, and heaven is here and now. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. The power of the living Spirit flows through us now, and the glory and the light of the everlasting presence is around us. And that presence does go before us and prepare the way, and the power does go with us and make perfect our path. We affirm that this kingdom and this power and this glory, we affirm it for our beloved country, and we affirm that our leaders are led and guided in all their decisions, that they are impelled to do that which is noble and constructive. We affirm that this, our beloved nation, shall continue to exist in freedom and under divine guidance, shall keep sacred the liberty of each one of us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forevermore. And now let us take as the thought for our meditation today these words from the Lord's Prayer. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, as each says quietly to himself. Our Father which art in heaven. We affirm that our Father which art in heaven is the Spirit of God in us. Our Father is within us as well as around us, and heaven is here and now. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. The power of the living Spirit flows through us now, and the glory and the light of the everlasting presence is around us. And that presence does go before us and prepare the way, and the power does go with us and make perfect our path. We affirm that this kingdom and this power and this glory, we affirm it for our beloved country, and we affirm that our leaders are led and guided in all their decisions, that they are impelled to do that which is noble and constructive. We affirm that this, our beloved nation, shall continue to exist in freedom and under divine guidance, shall keep sacred the liberty of each one of us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forevermore. And now let us take as the thought for our meditation today these words from the Lord's Prayer. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, as each says quietly to himself, Our Father which art in heaven. We affirm that our Father which art in heaven is the Spirit of God in us. Our Father is within us as well as around us, and heaven is here and now. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. The power of the living Spirit flows through us now, and the glory and the light of the everlasting presence is around us. And that presence does go before us and prepare the way, and the power does go with us and make perfect our path. We affirm that this kingdom and this power and this glory, we affirm it for our beloved country, and we affirm that our leaders are led and guided in all their decisions, that they are impelled to do that which is noble and constructive. We affirm that this, our beloved nation, shall continue to exist in freedom and under divine guidance, shall keep sacred the liberty of each one of us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, now and forevermore.
Breathe. What are you getting from this prayer? How, in what ways is it shifting your own way of thinking about what is possible? In what ways can you feel your inside shifting? When Ernest Holmes spoke of this prayer, you may have noticed at the beginning, he says, and for our meditation today. And he used the line from the Lord's Prayer, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. It is the kingdom of God, of spirit, the heaven that exists and can exist on earth, that he was speaking for, that he was claiming in his prayer, in the treatment. And I'm going to listen to it a few more times myself. That's how much it is impacting me. And I'm hoping it is impacting you as well, especially at this particular time. We have such a great opportunity to take Science of Mind principles out into the world, and for them not only to inspire or impress how we process what is going on in the world, the wars, the poverty, the challenges, the political division, right? The polarities that exist, that we know about and that we feel in our day-to-day lives. Yes, we always want to bring our Science of Mind principles so that we individually have a life that reflects joy and peace and beauty and order. And it is also our responsibility to pay attention to and to claim that which is true, or that we seek to be true, in global concerns, whether, and I say global, and I actually do mean global, but maybe I should say in our collective concerns, because we have a lot of collectives, right? We're part of the collective of our family, we're part of the collective of our workplace, or if we're independent if we're entrepreneurs, right, the experience we create with our clients. We have a collective in our church community, in our schools, in our city, in our state, and our nation. So we're all a part of many collectives. And when we are doing prayer, we're grounding the truth, or what we see to be the truth, expressing in ourselves individually and in the collective. Noble and constructive, I believe in prayer. Thank you, Shay. I believe in prayer. And I know that praying to change someone else's free will can lead into more of a magical thinking dynamic. Just playing devil's advocate, I'm not alone. No, this is a really good observation. So we are not saying that we will change someone else's free will. And this, I'm so glad you posted this, because I think sometimes people do believe that when we speak a prayer, we are requiring someone to act a certain way. And it's easy to spot when we say we want this candidate to win this election, right? So I might say in my state, in the race for senator from my state, my prayer is that person X is elected, right? Or my prayer, and that is not a totally I can pray that, and I want to go to a deeper level. Or to pray that person Y, if they're elected, they will treat they will reverse what they've campaigned for, right? They've campaigned to support a certain thing that I don't like. And if I say, oh, well, I pray that if this person gets elected, they're going to change their mind, right? So what's different about what Ernest Holmes did was he said that leaders will be, well, and maybe because he used the word impelled. I didn't hear it that way, but I do hear how that could sound like he's saying they will be forced to. But I believe, I know that he meant it in the context of they will be guided by universal wisdom, providing information and ideas to them that allows them or guides them or impels them to choose things that are in the best interest for the largest number of people. So here's a great example of what's often tricky about our language and languaging. We don't all have the same definition of what would be noble. We don't all have the same definition of, if Tracy makes a decision, Tracy will think it's constructive. And Shay may be hearing that decision and saying, well, Tracy, from a spiritual perspective, energetically, that is not constructive. That is not going to help you. But Tracy is making the decision from this perspective that this is the most constructive thing I can see to do at this time. So it is tricky in our language. So if we say we want people to be guided and to demonstrate that they are making decisions in a way that is representing that they are noble and constructive, then we have to let go of what the specific example of noble is and what the specific example of constructive is. And we have to trust that Spirit, the all-knowing infinite intelligence of Spirit, is able to guide that person to what is noble and constructive for the greatest good. I'm being quiet because I also need to take that in, right? It's the same thing that causes us trouble or challenges us when we say best and highest good, but we have in our own mind an idea about what that is. That limits what could happen because we're looking for a specific thing. So we have to train ourselves to, like, oh, spirit's understanding of best and highest good. It might look very different from Tracy's understanding of best and highest good. So I'm going to trust that in Ernest Holmes' prayer, when he says our leaders are impelled to do what is noble and constructive, that again, he does say led to, and he does put all of this in the context of the Spirit of God is within each one of us. And so it is that spirit that is working to create the heaven that we can experience right here and now. Let me rephrase that. It is that spirit that has created heaven, and we can, if we are in alignment with that, create heaven on earth right now. So I hope you have been inspired by the Metaphysical Lord's Prayer for our country as Ernest Holmes delivered it. And I want to encourage you to please visit the Science of Mind archives and find it, or find other things that are of interest to you or that support you in your own spiritual growth and deepening your understanding. The Science of Mind archives has all kinds of materials that you can download. You can download past issues of both Science of Mind magazine and Creative Thought magazine as well. So please visit them, and visit us every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time for the Saturday morning Science of Mind and Spirit Saturday morning conversations. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am so delighted to hang out with you today. And let's see, is there anything else I'm supposed to announce today? I don't think so. So I'm just going to encourage you to have the most amazing week you possibly can. And I want to encourage you to do what Ernest Holmes said at the beginning of the prayer. For today's meditation, or for this week's meditation and contemplation, contemplate the line from the Lord's Prayer, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. Have a good week, everybody.